Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Welcome to another installment of our sales coaching. My name is Satima Fowler, and I'm my cohort Ray. Today's session, as you guys all know, we're following the MSP Success Sales Book. And today we're going to talk about how to prepare for the first discovery meeting. And before you guys roll your eyes and say, look, we know how to dress, we know how to prepare, we've been doing this for a long time, I can guarantee a lot of you are not preparing the right way. And it's all about how to position you as a high-end, trusted consultant to come in to help solve a big problem. How to do that, we want to position you right from the beginning. And that's what we're going to cover today, how to prepare for the first discovery meeting. So we're going to finish the prepared content. And as we're doing that, if you have questions that are popping up in your mind, please put it in the Q&A. And Debbie Bush, who is monitoring it, Isaac couldn't be here today. Debbie Bush is our partner in crime. She is going to be making notes of it. And as time allows at the end, we will answer your questions. So with that, a quick intro of myself. My name is Satima Fowler. I am a IT business owner and MSP business owner. Capstone is what I started a long time ago, and now I am with Integris IT. And I used to hate sales. I did not think I could ever do sales, but out of necessity, because I got tired of eating mac and cheese, I had to figure it out. And it's a process. It's literally a process that you follow. So that I can't wait to teach all of you what I've learned, all the mistakes I've made. Ray, do you want to introduce yourself?
sure. Thanks, Satima. And I do have 20 years of sales and executive sales management experience, but I like you, Satima, and like many others, it wasn't my first choice. I kind of fell into it, and about half of that was working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and running the small and mid-sized business unit of about 3 million businesses, and did oversaw field sales and phone sales and digital sales and you name it. And then from there, I worked with some private equity groups. As I say, I was a glorified sales manager. They called me CEO, but the name of the game is always drive more sales, right? And a few years ago, I started working with Robin and doing work with the internal team, like managing the internal sales team, helping with sales playbooks and processes. And now getting to work with all of you on the coaching side too. So yeah, looking forward to getting into this one. And Satima, you're right. This is it seems like such a small thing, but sometimes the small ingredients in a recipe make all the difference. So I'm looking forward to getting into this one.
Yeah, Ray, one of the things that I hear all the time from MSP business owners is that they are having trouble getting leads. But if they get a lead, if they get an appointment, they're like, oh, put me in front of anybody, I'll close that. And then we hear on our coaching calls, there's so many of them where the prospect has gone dark. They haven't heard from the prospect is ghosting them.
Mhm.
So no, you're not closing them. So don't be so arrogant. Listen to, first of all, thank you for being on the call. So you guys are not the arrogant ones. So we're here to teach you some things. Keep an open mind. With that, Debbie, can you go to the next slide? So the ultimate sales playbook that Robin has authored, and she presented it at the sales summit. And there's really 5 steps to closing a sale. And so we're following that workbook. The first one is the initial qualification call. And Ray, we've done 3 or 4 of these webinars so far, right?
Yeah, I think this is our fourth, I think.
Okay. So we're following the playbook in order. The first one was about how to do the initial qualification of the prospect. And then what we're diving into now is the first meeting, the first time appointment, which is the discovery meeting. So next series of webinars is all going to be about how to do the discovery meeting. Then we're going to talk about the diagnostic, the technical assessment portion of it. Then number 4 is how to do the close, how to prescribe and close. And number 5 is how to do the follow-up. So we're going to go in order in all of these. So next month, it's going to be a different topic, and we're following the playbook. Next slide, please. So today we are basically talking about not how to do the discovery meeting, but how to prepare. So the purpose of the first meeting, we're going to cover that, how to prepare for the meeting, how to make a positive first impression, because remember, we want you to walk in as a trusted consultant, and how to start the meeting correctly. And so for those of you who are following us along on the playbook, we're covering pages 55 and 56. So with that, Ray, I'm going to switch over to the playbook so people can follow along with us. Ray, in your mind, like, okay, I mean, you teach Robin salespeople how to do sales, like, and you coach tons of other people. So what really is the purpose of the discovery call?
We say like the success is in the sequence. So this will be my second recipe reference, but like, if you have all the right ingredients and you don't do things in the right order, you're not going to end up with the same product. Like if you're trying to bake a cake and, even if you have the right ingredients, if you don't do all the steps and do them in order, they're not able to build, you're not going to get the same product, right? So this part of the process, like you said, it seems like a really small part of this, but it's crucial. And understanding why you're going into this is really important. So the purpose of this meeting in particular is not to tell them how great you are, right? Like this is not necessarily to sell your company or your services. This meeting it's about them. It's about, the consultative expert level sales process means understanding more about them and what's going on and like the problems, like Robin says here, what's the big hairy problem, and that's the one they know about, so what is that problem? Why is that problem a problem to them? I differentiate sometimes between the problem, which is usually a fact, and then the pain that problem is causing, right? And there may be other implications in the company. So you want to understand about that. You want to understand how urgent is this problem? How critical is it? How big of a problem are you working with? And then, are there other problems that they don't know about? Because I've been on the other side of this table, and you don't know what you don't know, so you're learning about that. You want to understand, is it something I can actually help you with? The results that you're trying to get, can I actually help you deliver that? And you want to learn about the person or the people that you're working with, like as a group, are they qualified to make a decision? Can they afford your services? Are they willing to invest in the real solution, or do they just want like a Band-Aid, like the cheapest thing out there? So you're learning about their process. And if you notice, most of this, the only thing that's about you is really trying to determine, is there a probability that I have a sale here? Like, is there a high probability? That is it. Like it's really them oriented. And you've got to remember, as a consultant, you can't start prescribing solutions without diagnosing a problem. And so you make sure you're offering the right prescription, but it's also, if you don't go through this process, the credibility and the trust that they're going to have in your recommendation is going to be lower. Like I wouldn't trust a mechanic that told me what I needed if he didn't bother to look at my car, right? So going through this is really about understanding them, and it's about making sure that your prescription, your solution is going to be more credible. And I know you have a post-discovery checklist, Satima, that you used when you were running this process, and we can show that at the end, I think.
Yeah, we'll cover that for sure. So basically what I'm hearing you say, and I feel like a lot of people don't like maybe hear it, but they don't do it, is that we know you're especially if you're an MSP business owner and you started the business, your company's product and services very well. You started it. And if you're a salesperson on this call, I'm sure you've gone through the training of, what is a managed services, like, you've gone through the, what is a backup, antivirus, like you've gone through that. We know you know that. But the purpose of this meeting is how to become an expert on solving the prospect's problems. And it's not just about your company's product. So even though you're confident in that, you need to now learn how to be confident in solving the person who's sitting across from you, their problems.
Yeah.
So with that, this is what the documents basically is telling us. So the purpose of the first meeting is to understand the prospect and opportunity. So you're there to do that. Establish yourself as a true business advisor and determine if there's a mutual basis for moving ahead, because you don't want to get in this gray area of, you're questioning, does the prospect like me? Do they want my services? Why haven't I heard from them? So you want to skip all that if you do this meeting right. So and like Ray mentioned, we're going to go through a checklist at the end, but basically the big components is, to identify what is their big hairy problem that you're there to solve. What's the result that the prospect wants you to produce? What does success look like for them? Are you talking to the right person? Do they have the authority to make this decision? Can they afford what you're selling? Are they willing to pay your fees? Because we don't want to wait till like way down the sales process to find out about fees. You want to talk about fees during this and their budget during this meeting. Can you actually help them with what you provide? A lot of salespeople want the sale so bad that, let's say your company doesn't sell VoIP phone systems, but the prospect is saying they want a VoIP phone system. And then you're like, oh my God, I got to go sell a VoIP phone system. No, do they actually need what your company provides? And then is there a high probability that this will end up in a sale? So these are the objectives and the purpose of this first meeting. Ray, anything you want to add to this further before we move on?
No, I think the one thing I would add is just, you mentioned like you don't have to go in. The way that you're going to demonstrate you're an expert is by the quality of the questions that you ask, not just word vomiting a bunch of technical stuff. Like you don't want to just go in and we know that you know your company and you know tech and like how to deliver a solution, but you don't want to just word vomit that. You want to ask really pointed strategic questions that are used to, identify those other problems and those other pains that they have. So the quality of the question helps drive this.
Yep. So let's talk about how to prepare for this meeting. And this is the portion where a lot of you might be like, okay, I'm gonna leave this webinar now because I know I'm supposed to look good and all that. But I'll tell you from time and time, a lot of MSP owners are not good dressers. They kind of look like, they just came out of the server room fixing something. For sales, this is a process. There's things you got to do to prepare for the meeting, including the grooming. So we're going to cover that, even whether it interests you or not, because just pay attention. So first of all, arrange your schedule so you're not rushed, because even if it's a Zoom meeting or in person, if you are running late, mentally it throws you off and you're going to be thinking about that and you're not going to be prepared with the right questions and the right tone. So make sure you leave yourself plenty of time, even if it's Zoom meeting, to be there. Make sure you show up early. If you're driving, make sure your car is clean, because people sometimes will look outside and they will judge you by the type of car you have. Make sure it's not dirty. Have your materials in a neat, polished briefcase, not a beat up bag. And I'll tell you, everybody has their own shtick, right? For me, it was always about carrying a laptop bag with me. That gave me power. Like when I came out of my car with that and put my bag on, I felt ready. And if one day I actually forgot to bring that bag and it threw me off, right? Have you ever found that?
Yeah, the best people in the world, like Michael Jordan had the same free throw ritual, right? Like you're putting yourself in the right frame of mind, but it's that for you, it was the bag, but every pro has it's the pregame, process that you go through.
Yeah. And at a minimum, if you don't have your version of the briefcase bag, like I did, always walk in with some kind of portfolio that is nice, that is not tattered, with paper and pen. So don't go into the prospect meeting saying, oh, I forgot my pen, and business cards or whatever you need. Just make sure you're prepared. Now let's talk about dress. I mean, this is, people in tech, it seems to be all over the place. Again, I will only talk about what worked for me. I wanted to stand out. I didn't want to be like every other MSP that was in there before me. I wanted to stand out. So for me, I always said, okay, I don't know how the prospect in front of me is going to be dressed. They might be in tattered jeans, or they may be like in a three-piece suit. So I'm going to dress as if I'm appropriate for all. So I am going to dress as if I'm sitting in front of somebody with a three-piece suit. So I always dressed up. That was my thing. Your thing might be, wearing your company shirt logo. I'm not a big fan of polos. If you have a, button-down shirt with your company's logo, like I love that. Make sure it's pressed and not wrinkled. And then, the shoes, like make sure like if you're a guy, especially, and your shoes look like, it's filled with snow and salt, depending on where you're from, and it's looking kind of tethered, have a pair of nice shoes that you use before you go into the sales meeting. Wear nice shoes. And then Ray, we got to talk about body odor.
Wait, why me? You meant me?
No, good thing we're on Zoom. Nothing turns me off more than when a sales guy walks into my office. Either smells like smoke, bad cologne, bad breath. Like I can't focus. I can't focus on anything else.
Gross.
But is there a Zoom version of that? Like you feel like people should also do like.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned like the shoes, the smell. Even if you're doing this remotely, like you need to make sure, same thing, like that your attire is, professional, that it's the image that you want to project. And then look at your background, is your bed that isn't made like sitting in the background, or is it intentional? Like, do you have things in the background that are intentional? And even on virtual, like I think on most Zooms, there's an option to make it fuzzy in the background. Worst case scenario, like if you can't find like a really, really professional spot. But if you're consistently doing sales calls on, remotely, virtually, you've really got to have a designated space that you can go to consistently that's intentionally, behind you. But thankfully, I haven't smelt anybody's breath over a Zoom yet. So
thank goodness. That's the best part about Zoom. I mean, I think like, what I saw that drove me crazy during the pandemic is that salespeople would get on and they literally had on like a baseball cap, a t-shirt, and their bed in the background. Well, guess what, folks? Pandemic is over. Just because you're working from home, now you need to like get rid of that bed. You need to put on a nice press shirt and be ready for this sales call, whether it's in person or not. So yeah, even on Zoom. So now let's move on. We've covered enough about grooming. Hopefully all of you got the message.
Point made.
None of you are guilty of that, of course, if you're on this call. But let's talk about how to make a great first impression.
Yeah, and if I can, Satima, like definitely like the preparation and the grooming and all that, like it's part of that's making sure that you don't screw anything up, right? Like you don't want a distraction. You don't want your shoes or, the odor of smoke to be a distraction for the person. But the other part of this whole thing is about your mindset. When you know that feeling when you go into something and you're fully prepared, when you've done your homework and you've done everything you can, that feeling that you have, and that feeling when you don't, and no matter how good you are at sales, I've listened to thousands of sales calls, and if you're winging it, it's amateurs wing it, and you're not bringing 100% confidence to those calls and to those meetings. Like I promise you, and you can't project confidence to your prospects that you don't actually have. So there is, part of this preparation is like I said, making sure that you don't screw anything up in the process, but it's also just getting you in the right frame of mind, making sure that you're in like, hey, how can I help you, right? Type of thing. And you just don't get there if you don't put yourself in the right mindset to go in with the confidence that you need. So yeah, I think all that plays into prep and the impression really.
looking back, some of my early mistakes, like I thought the way I, make the first impression, I didn't really think about making a great first impression. I was more worried about like, do I know what to say about my company? But anyway, like I used to go in, I used to like, like look them up to see if like when I first walked in, like if I saw pictures of kids, like I was going to ask the little questions about their kids, hey, oh, I see your kids are in baseball, like look for things like that's how I used to start the meeting. And then, I used to have all these glossies about my company and what we did. And then, I used to like talk about how great we are and all that. Like that's what I thought you did, to make a positive first impression. And we're going to teach you like, no, don't do that. There's other ways you can do this. And so here's a couple of things that Robin is telling us. So give yourself a pep talk in the car before you go in. Take the pressure off by reminding yourself that you didn't have the sale before you went in. And if you don't get it now, you are no worse off. So being confident that Ray talked about is so important because you're walking in and they're going to buy from you based on the confidence that you are showing that you can solve their big problem. And if you are saying to yourself that if I don't close this deal, I'm not going to be able to pay rent. And that is going to factor in on what you say, how you say it. So the transition point for me started when I started closing deals is when I gave myself a pep talk that no matter whether I get the sale or not, the next hour, I'm going to provide such incredible value to the prospect that they're going to love who I am and they're going to remember who I am because I made their next hour better than before I walked in. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, it will result in a close and a sale. But going in, I stopped thinking about closing the deal. I was going to go in there and meet an amazing business owner, and I was going to solve and make their next hour better for them and teach them a few things that they didn't know before. So that's the mindset that helped me. Next thing is to act confident, speak clearly, smile. 90% of communication, Robin is reminding us, is nonverbal. Okay. So you got to have that kind of in your voice. You got to have that oomph in your voice. Create reciprocity, present the secretary and the owner with a gift if you like. This is optional, of course, but at least at a minimum, if you don't have a gift, just say hello. Don't just rudely walk by the receptionist. They will remember because you want them to be your ally in the next steps. And take notes. I can't tell you how many times a salesperson has walked into my office, no pads of paper, nothing. They didn't take a single note about our meeting. You need to take notes. You need to take a piece of paper and you need to take notes. You need to show that you're paying attention. And it's all going to help you remember later when you're putting a proposal together anyway. So anything you want to add to this, Ray, before we move to the next section?
I think going back to the first point you made about, the frame of mind that you had and going from, I need this sale to, how I'm going to make their day better. I have found that to be the case, whether it's in sales, public speaking, anything. When you think about how you're helping somebody else instead, and you take the focus off of what I have to get from this, it seems like such a small shift, but it has personally, that's been a big part of just de-stressing all sales or speaking or whatever it is, because you just turn the focus to how can I add value? How can I help somebody else? And that comes across in your credibility, because the next person, if they're shopping around, is going to come in and do exactly what you said. They're going to, figure out, how do I just talk about my company and how great I am, and never really go through the motion of, or go through the action of really being a credible expert and learning about them. So no, I think that's a great point.
All right. So now let's transition to starting the meeting. And as you know, Ray and I love to do a little role play. So all of you will get a little bonus. We'll do a little role play. But let me go through what is Robin is telling us how to start the meeting. So this is where you're sitting in front of the prospect and you're setting the stage to start the meeting. If there's several people, whether you're sitting in front of them in real life in their office or over Zoom. Real life, I guess Zoom is real life too. You're going to do a quick introduction. You're going to say who you are and what you do at the company. And then if there's only one person in front of you, that's fine. But if there's multiple people in front of you, you want everybody to introduce themselves. So ask them to introduce themselves and their role in the company. Because again, remember, you don't want to be blindsided by anybody. So you want to know everybody's perspectives. So you don't want to find out later that, such and such was a CFO sitting on the left-hand side that you never introduced yourself to, or they didn't introduce them, and they're the real decision makers. So you want to find out who they are at that meeting. And same thing on your end. If you're taking a technical engineer with you, you want to introduce them and their role in the company as well. So a sound bite. So that's the introduction. And then you want to kind of summarize. You want to review the notes that the SDR took for you when they set up the call, or when you set up the call, or when they called in, whatever was written down from the incoming lead intake form. You want to basically summarize what they're saying. So the soundbite could be, my understanding is that you're looking for this, you're having recurring IT problems. Is that correct? And then you can say, just to confirm, I have this meeting lasting an hour. Does that still work for you? Do you have a hard stop? Because I've had meetings where I walked in and literally 15 minutes later, they're like, oh, you know what? I only have 15 minutes scheduled. And that was a surprise to me. Have you had a chance to look over the material I sent you? So if you're sending out a shock and awe, this is the time to ask, because it will show you, it'll gauge their engagement, with your company. And then you're basically going to say, I'm going to cover a little bit about who we are and what we do. But before we get started, do you have any questions about me or my company? And then there's the actual agenda. So some people actually decide to give a physical agenda, or they just say verbally what is on the agenda. But it's extremely important that you tell them what is going to happen next. What do you want to add to that, Ray?
I want to talk about the agenda, but real quickly on the starting the meeting piece. You mentioned, going like, hey, this is what I understand so far, like basically summarizing what you've done. And what we do internally is like our part of our playbook is go back and listen to the call with the SDR, whether you're doing this in person or, virtually. Try to go back and listen to that call. There may be things contextually that you hear that may not have been caught, or, like you said, look at that form and you're doing the intake form, or the, like the lead form, or whatever it is, the questions that they answer, because you don't want it to be, like that feeling at a doctor's office where you just keep answering the same crap, like on different forms. You don't want that experience. Like if they've already asked a question or answered a question, you should know that, right? As the expert, you should have done your homework and have that. So when you summarize that to start the meeting, just adds to your credibility a little bit. So I just wanted to add that piece. But the agenda here's the team. It says optional, and I don't know if we mean like optional in terms of doing it or in terms of giving it in person, but I would say this is a really important piece of the process. And you're doing it for a number of reasons. Really, one is you want to take control of that call or that meeting from the get-go, because you have a process. And if they let you run your process, you're going to be able to help them more, right? So in order to do that, you need to take control initially. And when you set the agenda at the beginning of this, basically what you're doing is you're setting up guardrails for the rest of the meeting and the rest of the call. And we just did this internally. Yesterday, literally, we just coached somebody. We listened to a call. The agenda wasn't set the way that we have it in the playbook. And in the rest of the call, the person just kind of wandered around on the call, because it's harder to take control back, once you've given it up. So, taking control is one. Another reason I think this is really important is you're showing that you have a process. People trust people with a process, and you're saying, hey, this is how this is going to go. Because you got to remember, you're teaching them sometimes how to buy IT services. And so setting the agenda says, this is how this is going to go. And they go, all right, cool. Like you have a process. That's trust you a little bit more. And now I I have a little bit more clarity on what to expect, for today and maybe even like subsequent meetings. And then this last piece here, the question that she has about getting their expectations. I think the questions here are great. One that I like is, so what would make this a 10 out of 10 for you? And you understanding what their expectations are when you get going. You don't want to find that out, that you missed the mark, something specific that they wanted to have answered or something like that at the end when you run out of time. So take control, show that you've got a process, you're a pro, and get their expectations. And then the rest of the call tends to go a lot more smoothly than if you don't do this on the front end, from my experience.
Great. Has it been your experience when you are training salespeople, like a lot of salespeople don't follow an agenda, like they don't, and why is that? Are they just being lazy, or they just winging it, or like why don't people show an agenda?
I don't know if it's lazy. I think the reason probably varies person to person, but I tend to find it from the person, like the mindset of the salesperson. That's kind of, I call it the unicorn salesperson. Like, I don't need a process. Like, I've got enough charisma. I know IT. I've done this a million times. Like, kind of the first, when you said earlier at the beginning of the call, some people just show up and they're just going to wing it. And, the best actors on the planet, they have their pregame ritual. They know their lines. They practice, like they execute flawlessly. And so I don't know why they don't do it. Maybe it's just over sense of confidence. But it's costly, because then your process also isn't repeatable. Like, you're just kind of wing it on every single call. And I don't know about you, but that's not how I'm going to project confidence if I don't know what the hell's going on.
So for those of you that are following along the playbook, in the exhibit section, there is a sample written agenda that you can follow that format. We're also going to show it later during our call as well. But before we do that, Ray, are you ready for a little role playing?
Let's do it.
All right. So you're Prospect Ray, and I'm Satima, the salesperson.
Cool.
All right. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Ray. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. I'm super excited. I'm Satima Fowler. I am the co-CEO of Capstone IT. And in my notes, you're the CEO. You're looking, last time we talked, you are just beginning to search for IT support just to see what else is out there, because your current provider is not able to keep up with your business growth. Do I have this right?
Yeah, we have, I think we may have just outgrown the company. We've tripled in size in the past couple of years, and they were great when we got started and had a smaller team, but they just, we're not getting response times. We're not getting, just the level of service has changed. So just out here exploring my options and seeing what we can do, if there's a way to improve, really.
Sure. And Ray, when I last week after we spoke, I sent over a package that had some information about the company, especially because I know, people don't always know how to buy IT support services, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time during this meeting talking about my company. Did you get the package? Did you get a chance to look it over?
I did. I think I've got it over. You sent a book, right? I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
Okay. Yeah, I did. I didn't read the book yet, but I did go through some of the material. I skimmed it, honestly.
Sure. No problem. I can understand, we're all limited in time. There is a page in there that I included that you may want to look over. It just has a comparison chart of when you're interviewing multiple IT providers, what kind of things to look for, because, not everybody's buying IT services every day. So
Right.
Take a look at that when you get a chance.
Okay.
So, Ray, obviously you're going to have a lot of questions about me and my services, but what I'd like to do is ask a questions that is related to how are you using technology to run your business, and that'll give me an idea of where there's issues, where there's how you're running the business. And it will also give me an idea of what I provide and my services, if it can help solve your problems and if it can add value. And if so, I will let you know. And our next step is that if this is a mutual yes, that we want to go forward, we will do a technical assessment that will let us look under the hood a little bit, and that will help us put a action plan together of what we think is needed for your business.
Okay.
And if it's a no, if our services are not a good fit for, like, if I feel like my services are really not going to help what you're looking for, I'll be the first one to let you know. But you can feel free to let me know that too. My feelings won't be hurt. We're all adults and we'll remain friends. Does that sound okay, Ray?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yep, absolutely. Sounds like a fair deal.
Excellent. And before I get started with my questions, what were you hoping to accomplish during this call? Like, what would make this a 10 out of 10 for you?
I think for us, it's a matter of what would it cost to just replace what we have today? If we can get some better support for what we're already paying for. I think that's one question. And then the other is, I don't know what I don't know. And I think we're getting to a point where I may have to explore some other options. So just trying to understand what my options are as a company and how it plays into this. And like you said, I haven't done this and picked an IT company in several years. So I think just understanding what my options are really.
Excellent. Just so I understand what you said. So basically you're looking to see what kind of technology your business might need to run, and meet your business objectives. So that part, and then what it's going to cost to implement those solutions. Did I get that right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Excellent. We'll do that. All right, guys. So you guys
Perfect.
heard the role play of how to set the stage for the meeting.
Good
Hopefully you
job,
guys
team.
got a lot out of that. And Ray, you were a great prospect. You didn't get on my nerves. And hopefully my appearance did not turn you off. Good thing you can't see my shoes. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So that was the role play. So just so there's no confusion, you see, we didn't start the actual discovery meeting like questionnaire yet. That's gonna be in the future. But this is how we want you to start the meeting. So you position yourself as the true high-end consultant, and you're going to start to build their trust, and you're anticipating no surprises. You're asking things and setting the stage to get a decision at the end of this meeting. For me, you always should have the goal in mind. If your goal is to get that technical assessment scheduled at the end of the meeting, then that is what you should be focused on at the end of the meeting. That's your close, for this discovery meeting. And for the next several months, we're going to kind of break this down into small chunks. Now, for those of you that are on Ray's and my weekly sales coaching classes, we're going to give you a couple of weeks to practice this, and role playing is what makes this into muscle memory. So practice what Ray and I are teaching you, and then come prepared for the role playing. For those of you who are not on the call, we'll give you some information at the end, and if you want to be on one of our calls. But with that, Debbie, can you put this back on the presentation that you were sharing? Because I want to share some of the exhibits.
And while she does that, Satima, I was going to say, you said something really important, and it's just remembering all the time that you're just selling the next step in the process. So one part is understanding this process, which is what we're breaking down. And you understand, I'm not trying to sell the whole deal right now. It's just every step is designed to sell the next step and move through this process, like very, very intentionally. So I think that's a great point.
Thank you. Debbie, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so this is a one-page cheat sheet that I've used pretty much all the time. And if I was going on a meeting, I wanted to see which parts of this information I already had, and then what I still needed to get by the end of the meeting. And then if I had a salesperson, if one of my salesperson was going on a sales call, when they came back from the meeting, this is the checklist I used to see if they have answers to all of this, because this is what's going to help you put together a winning proposal. So Ray, you want to add something about this meeting checklist?
Well, I just think it's what we say yesterday. It's like a bingo card. Like you've got to fill all these things out. And you may have some of these pieces from the form that they filled out to book a call, from the call that your SDR made, from like whatever it is. So you're looking at it and you're saying, all right, what do I already have? And then what are the best questions I can use to get the rest of the information? Like it's, I think it was Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind, work backwards from what you need. And it really reinforces the importance of preparing properly. But no, I love, knowing exactly what you need to get out of this call.
Yeah. And so many people I found, especially like if it's a junior salesperson, they were afraid to ask a lot of these questions, and they would come back from a meeting and they would tell me, oh, the meeting, I would say, how did the meeting go? They're like, oh, it went great. And then as we're going through these, they skipped over so many of these sections, and you need everything that is on this page in order to put together a winning proposal. So, you need to understand their situation, their needs, their motives. You want to see if it's a good fit. Is what your company does, is it a good fit for what they're looking for? Money. Do they have the money like that? I mean, they have to be able, you could have the best service, but if they're not willing to pay for it, then guess what? It's not going to be a sale. You need to find out, who are you competing against? Their decision-making process. And the next steps. Did you set the next meeting? Like, do they know what's next? So this is a great checklist, whether for yourself or for your salespeople. When you come back from the meeting, or when they come back from the meeting, run through this. Make sure you have answers to all of these. This is also a sheet you can use before you walk into the meeting as part of your meeting prep. So in your mind, you kind of know, and feel free to have it in front of you, and you can write on it while you're talking to the prospect during the discovery call.
Well, it's like on our accountability groups, Satima, when somebody says, hey, I'm getting ghosted, no one's calling me back. Where do we go? We go right back to these questions. What was the need? What was the urgency? How critical was it? Was it a good fit? Was there a budget? So you've got to get these things now, because they'll come out later when you're not getting a response, or when you're handling objections. It all comes back to here.
That's right. And then we're gonna break all this down on how to ask all these questions properly.
Yep.
So don't worry. In the next few months, we're gonna get through, because you're not gonna ask it the way you want. This is an internal form. This is the way, we're just saying what needs to get covered, but how to ask it eloquently in the right time, we will follow that in the next couple of months. So next slide, please, Debbie. So this is the template and example of what, if you want to have a printed out agenda, what it could look like, and looks very professional, the date and your name and what is the purpose of the meeting. If you're going to do an introduction of your company in the beginning, if you choose to do it later, that's fine. Review of their current situation, the technical assessment, and next meeting. So this is what you're running through, so the prospect has a very clear idea that you know what you're talking about. You're going to lead them through a process that's going to help solve the big hairy problem that they're after. So this shows that you know what you're doing. Yeah. So Ray, anything else? What about the physical nature of it? Do you think like people should just present a real piece of paper?
I like the idea of it. I like the idea of having them seeing it. It's almost like on this webinar, we use it as a guide. Like there's clarity, make sure we're on the same page, looking at the same thing. So it's part clarity. The other thing is it's about control. Like this is how you're controlling the call. Like this is the agenda of what we're going to go through. So clarity and control. And if you can hand it to them, I think it's better for for you both to literally be looking at the same thing if it's in person. And if it's virtual, you may be able to show some of this, but you don't want to necessarily keep this up while you're talking to somebody, so but yeah, in person I would hand it out if you can.
Okay. I agree. And I think like, it's part of your process. Like just if you do it every time, you feel confident that you know how you're going to start the meeting and how it's going to flow. If you do it once in a while, you may or may not, feel like you have it under control if you're skipping it sometimes. And that's what I find a lot of people do. they wing it, and it's never the same sales process. And then when the sale is kind of stuck, you don't know where to focus, because you say, okay, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And they're like, well, I skipped that part. So then you don't know why you're stuck. Is it because you skipped it? So just do it the same way every time. I felt that for me, it was easier as a salesperson. And it also kind of, if the sale didn't go anywhere, I kind of knew like where I can go back to if I wasn't following a process.
And how to
And the
improve.
other thing that I want to kind of also say about in preparation, I think, I used to, as when I first started, when I was making tons and tons of mistakes, I, did the cookie cutter thing of, walking into the office, looking for pictures and making conversations about that. But there's so much you can find out about using LinkedIn, about professional connections, and like you can use that. So I got better at the initial walking into the office and rapport building, because I could say, okay, this person is a big board member at Habitat for Humanity. So I made, and when I start talking about Habitat for Humanity and that you're a board member, that lights up their eyes because they're passionate about it. So those are some of the preparation stuff that I used to do. Ray, do you teach salespeople to do some kind of just looking at the internet, looking for news about the company, about the person?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you should probably just have a checklist, check out LinkedIn, Google the company, Google the person. Like we were saying before, if you can go listen to the call, review the forms, but what I would do, to your point about consistency, have that checklist so that you're going through it each time. And then if you get into a meeting and you realize like, damn it, I could have, like, you add it to the checklist and make sure you never do it again, and so it's constant improvement. And that's the value of consistency, is not only do you know how to diagnose where something's gone wrong if you're getting ghosted, but it's also if you change all the variables, if you just show up and wing it every time, it's like changing every variable in an experiment at the same time, and you don't know how to better drive improvement. Whereas if you've got a process like this and you're sticking to it, you can change one piece at a time and just make sure it's constantly getting better. But yeah, the checklist, I would go through all the, we say common sense stuff, but literally write it out as simple as it seems, have it in front of you and make sure you go through it. Because I would forget one or two things periodically.
Yeah. And when I walked into a prospect's office, like, first of all, I had my little briefcase, but in there I would have my portfolio, and in the notes, I always wrote down a few things that was the same. So before I like got in the car, or if you're doing it over Zoom, before you like would start the meeting, like an hour before, I would write the name of the company, the name of the person I'm meeting with, and I like to write with pen and paper. Like, it just does something to my brain where I retain it better than typing. And then I write down the physical address if I'm going to go meet them, because there are times that things have happened, like over time, you figure things out, like maybe your charger died or whatever, and you didn't have the address anymore. So I always wrote down the physical address and the phone number of the prospect in case I needed to call them about, I'm running late or something, because of traffic, something that I did not, foresee. Of course, I'm trying to be there early. And then I would review the SDR's call. I would review my CRM notes to see what were the main sticking points they told us about that they're looking to solve. And I would have that. The next thing I would have is a overall budgetary number. Like, if they told me they had 50 employees and my, average per seat charge is 145, I would multiply that by 50. So I had an overall idea of the size of the opportunity. Now, that can go up or down, but in prep for the meeting, I always had that number identified. And then any notes that I learned from doing LinkedIn review or just research about their company, I would write those down too. So that would be my first sheet of paper as my prep work before I walked into the person's, before I started the meeting.
And because you're doing all that, you're walking in with a confident mindset. Like, it's because you've done the homework, you have.
That's right. You're right. You're absolutely right, Ray. You're always so right.